name is Prince Dube. I'm the chief curator of the Soweto Museum, which is the cluster of 3 museums, the Hector Peterson Museum and Memorial, the June 16 Memorial Acre, and this one, the Kliptown Museum.
My name is Prince Messingham. I'm from the community of Kliptown. Kliptown was built on 2 farms called the Kliptown, hence the name Kliptown. It was sort of proclaimed on the 5th of April 1903, and it was then cut up into lots that were sold to people of color. Everybody could own property in Kliptown, and it stretched from what is called the old Potchefstroom Road, which is now the Cresani Road, right to the bottom of the N12. Kliptown was sort of a mixed area. You also had white people, living amongst black people, because just across on the other side of the railway line is the Harrison family. Mr. Harrison was married to a black woman. So you also had interracial marriages in the area. It was also a place that actually attracted people from afar. You had Asians in this area. There was a bubonic plague in I think 1904, and they were moved to Kliptown. Some were moved to what was then the old Pimville. The museum itself is housed in a former hardware that was owned by the pioneer Indian family called the Jadas family, who also played a very significant role during the Congress of the People. They actually donated timber for the building of the stage and, just to fence off the space, and the Tacolias up the road.
My name is Brian McKechnie. I am an architect, and my role with Walter Sisulu Square, I suppose, it's just like an interested party in the heritage of the square. There were months and months that led up to that Congress at Freedom Square, where people had gone all around South Africa to collect what the citizens of the country felt should be included in this Congress.
When the Freedom Charter was drawn, practically, the nation was united. People were seeing each other as human beings. Only the political setup introduced by apartheid government, not necessarily saying that all the people in South Africa were divided, but the government forced this division into the people. Now, when you talk about Freedom Charter and all, and then the Congress of the People, if you were born afterwards, like from the 50s onwards, we don't have that sense and that picture of unity of the people back then. This is where people were like the area that symbolized that unity, where people were just who could do anything. Like all races could mix and work or do everything together other than any other place in Johannesburg. So that unity, we do not visualize it, especially us who were not there during that time. We grew up, used trains, and trains were like divided.
The Freedom Charter was held here because you also had the movement of the forceful removals in Sophia Town taking place during that period. So the only sort of freehold area where people, because Indians had property in Kliptown, they moved freely. And you also had colored people in the area, you had black people. So it was easy to have it here so that people don't need a permit, to enter, to come in and out of Kliptown. I remember 1994, there was this whole thing as to who put it together. You know, I think especially from other sort of liberation movements saying that it was put together by white people. Walter Sisulu came out and say that, you know, they told Lionel what needs to go into the actual document.
So when you enter the museum, the first area, the open area, it shows you the makeup of the society back then. You will see a little bit of that, showing that how people lived back then. And then on your other side, then you see it will show you the start or the proposals of the Congress of the People, how it was proposed by Zach Matthews. You will also see pots, big pots. Those are pots that were used to cook for the delegates, as you are aware that they had to cook for them. You'll see a room with the sculptures, wire sculptures, a group of people assembling in the room that also represent the delegates. When you walk out, you will see a note towards the end of the museum that says the museum is under construction, so we're still acquiring more information to build up into the exhibit. So that's why now we have to redo the entire exhibition, because we have gained more knowledge since this one was made.
The square was declared a National Heritage Site on the 22nd of November 2019. The idea initially was that you'd have this large square which would become a public gathering space, almost like a sort of community heart in Kliptown. And then they divided the square into two sections. So the top section of the square talks about the past of our democracy. And that part of the square was divided into smaller squares which represented each of the provinces in South Africa. And on each province you had an X. So you're talking about this movement towards democracy, towards the chance where every South African would be able to vote in the future of our country. And the bottom half of the square was left open. So it basically talks about the future of the country, the future of South Africa, this kind of idea that our future is not yet charted. It's it's not written down, and it's still quite organic. The square is then enclosed by two sort of very linear structures. On the northern structure, you have like community spaces. So I think they've got a community, they're like various community gathering facilities. There's a community hall. I think also a space for like community meetings. And then on the south of the square, which is where we're sitting now, you have the museum, and then there's also a hotel and a trading space. And the formation of those linear structures, you've got all these beautiful columns that form the structures, and the columns talk about the blue gum trees that were the sort of defining factor of the original square. And then as you get up to the top of the square, you've got these lovely steps, and as you go up the steps, you get to these more columns. And the columns at the top of the square speak about the various different tenets of the Freedom Charter. So things like the people shall own the land that they work, everyone will have access to education, everyone will have equal rights. So each one of those principles of the Freedom Charter is commemorated with a column at the top of the square, and on top of the column there's a lovely little sculpture that actually talks about the different things. So you've got like a man tilling the land, and you've got a person who's like a teacher talking about education. So it's this beautiful visual representation in a physical space of the ideas of the South African Constitution. And then right in the middle of the square there's this very interestingly shaped concrete cone that is the sort of celebration of the Freedom Charter. And inside of that cone, again, you have all the principles of the Charter cast into a tablet in the middle of this conical structure. And in the middle of that, there's this flame, which when the square was opened in 2005 by President Mbeki, that flame was lit, and that's the flame that celebrates our democracy in South Africa.
My name is Fiso Kanyile. I work for Milzet Consulting as a managing site of Walter Sisulu Square. Currently, the challenge we're facing is theft, especially cable theft around the neighborhood, since we have a township nearby the square. Due to restrictions, we have declined of tourists. The place is quiet, it's no longer vibrant like it used to be.
Main challenges were resources. For instance, the museum is under-resourced in terms of human resource staff. We only have 2 persons employed by the city. That is the education officer and then the museum attendant. And they are both not necessarily part of this museum. They were borrowed from Hector Peterson Museum to come in and operate this one. So the museum in a way does not have its own structure. So we're still working on getting its own structure, and we'll have to staff that. It must have its own staff operating it. Then we also have the shortage of financial resources.
Currently, we're attending meetings. There is a plan to renovate the square, to make the square more beautiful, to renovate the garden, they put the fencing, have proper security measures like CCTV cameras so that we can prevent the crime around there. So that when our tourists or our guests come here, when they come to a hotel, they feel safe.
The programs that we have, especially that will start as soon as we reopen. One, we've got an after-school workshop where we'll be workshopping kids that will enroll from the community. They will be attending art classes, history workshops, and different kind of activities.
We also have the multi-purpose wall that will make any kind of event that we think of. Festivals, gala dinner, we do have a venue that can do that event. That's what we do.
We're also going to have what we call women emancipators, people who took part during the Congress of the People in 1955, or those who were affected by it. So we will have researchers going out into the community, researching and documenting them. And then we'll put together one documentary based on their stories. Now, currently, when we're fortunate to have given money to redo the exhibition, because now it's been here since the museum was opened, and we've been asking to redo it. And we were fortunate that we will be redoing the entire exhibition. And so when we open again, we'll probably open with a new exhibition.
The message to people, they must come to the square. It's a beautiful place. We have a Freedom Charter. We have a beautiful museum. There are a lot of activities around Kliptown. They must just come to Kliptown.
The site is important, very important to us as South Africans. It's part of our history. It shaped the course of our history. The People's Congress in 1955 is very important. It's also started in schools and tertiary education.
To bring all South Africans together. I just think if the talks of talks happened then, we would have been a better society now. Just in terms of hindsight reflection. I think we would have been a different society.
As citizens, we need to know our history. We need to come to the museum, study it, and see how it influenced today's or current democracy. Over and above that, you need to know what happened before you, so that you don't repeat mistakes that our forefathers did. That might have affected the living conditions of humans here in Southern Africa.